I had a very good pastor that I learned under, and um, he's since passed on. And he would always, bring me in with different things like counseling and stuff like that. And I also got to observe, when somebody in the church would get their nose bent out of shape about something, and it was amazing how some people would just give a tongue lashing to the pastor and all this stuff. And he would look at me afterwards and say, "Welcome to the ministry."
This is The Calling, a family life original podcast with Steve Smith that features conversations with pastors talking about the challenges they face in their personal and professional lives as they minister to others and share the gospel. Our guest for episode 21 is Pastor Jeff Bisher of Windham Center Community Church in Rome, Pennsylvania.
Pastor Jeff, I always love background stories, like how did you get here to where you are today? Because, you talk to 100 people, no matter what their position is in life, and you could hear 100 different stories. So give us the Reader's Digest version. How did Jeff Bisher get to Windham Center Community Church in Rome, Pennsylvania, and kind of your backstory and leading up to where we are today?
All right. Well, I started out as a wild child, and I love the fact that, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us, because in August of 1989, he called me into his kingdom, and that's when I got saved. And he gave me such a hunger that, I couldn't get enough of his word. And so further on down the road, many churches and studying, working with other groups, I ended up being an assistant pastor back in 2005. And I was there for 11 years. And then God had to call me 3 times to be a full-time pastor. And it took 3 times before I actually believed it was him. And my wife and I prayed about it. Said, "Lord, I'm sorry if I hadn't answered your call, but if this is what you want, open the doors." And did he ever open them doors. And back in 2016, I got called to preach over at Windham Center. And we've been there ever since, and building relationships, and growing the church, and the church building itself was built in 1848.
Wow!
So I've had to learn how to be a plumber, electrician, carpenter, because it always needs a little something. But God has blessed us to where we've been able to, get the outside and the inside all going and replace the furnace and all that. And we've got a core group that comes to the Bible studies, and then, of course, the group that helps with everything. So we've been blessed with them. And, they consider themselves blessed with me because I'm kind of an old-time preacher. I preach from the Word and don't shy away from certain topics. And they also feel comfortable enough that they can ask questions in, a very casual atmosphere. My wife even got me a T-shirt, or the church got me a T-shirt that said, "I'm a pastor. Don't look so surprised."
I love it how God uses our background story to for his kingdom, because of your background and you self-proclaimed, in your words, not mine, wild child, you now can, your ministry increases more than other people, in that you can approach other people who are not yet saved, or you feel comfortable around those people, and you can say, hey, that's my story too. And you can relate to so many people that maybe you wouldn't have if you grew up in the church from day one, right?
True. I talked with a gentleman many years ago, and I was telling him, I said, I don't think I'm really saved. And he said, why? And I gave him my testimony and my background from what I came out of. Mm-hmm. And his eyes were just as big as a saucer. And he said, I can't relate to a thing you just said. He said, I grew up in the church and I've never done any of those things. And that was when the light went off. And I said, that's why you let me go through all that, Lord, is so that I can relate to other people. And I was visiting and witnessing with a gentleman in church who almost died from his alcoholism. He had turned gray, and I'd seen jaundiced people before, but I'd never seen anyone gray. And so when he finally came out of his coma and started getting better, then they started talking about putting him in rehab. Well, I told him about my testimony, and then it was his turn for his eyes to get real big, because he'd always known me as Pastor Jeff. And for him to think that I had gone through some of the things that he went through, that brought us closer together, because he knew I could understand what he was going through. And praise the Lord, he's been sober now for well over a year. He's come back to health, and God's blessed him abundantly. So, and it was because, we could talk, and he wasn't looking at me like I was born with a Bible in my mouth.
Right. We're talking with,
he knew I could relate.
Yeah. We're talking with Pastor Jeff Bisher of Windham Center Community Church in Rome, Pennsylvania. Pastor Jeff, you already mentioned your core group, and you have that. Why don't you talk about community and how important that is? There's, since the pandemic, and a lot of people have gone away from the church, and just what have you seen in your church? And speak on community, how important that is in the local church.
Well, up in Windham, it's kind of unique because it's a small rural community, a lot of farmers and a lot of gearheads too, a lot of people with like classic cars and stuff. Mm-hmm. But we also have a good rapport with the township supervisor, and we have worked with the community center, like at the outbreak of COVID. Our church and Windham Summit Church and the Windham Township all got together for a food giveaway, and it was very successful. We gave away like $10,000 worth of food in one day, and we had stations where people could just drive in, and they stop here and they get milk products. They stop here, they get fruit. They stop here, they get bread, and so on. And then we had elderly people who couldn't get out, and we had people volunteering to drive the packages of food and such to their homes. And so it is a very tight-knit community. And goodness gracious, the local cable company, they offered our church a very good deal for internet. And now, first time in 176 years, our church has internet. But everybody stands together with everybody. We had, I think it was my first or second year, we had flooding up there. And I had to take 3 different routes to get up there. And thankfully, I had all-wheel drive because the roads were washed out and people were hurting. And we got together with other churches, again, and the township. and help people clean up their property and recover some of their property. And everybody the community there works very, very well together.
You mentioned already about being a kind of a jack of all trades, being the plumber, carpenter, whatever, doing all those things, and obviously a pastor at your church. Do you struggle with getting some downtime or free time? Is that something you struggle with, or if you don't, what are some tips to give other pastors who have to do so many things? With you wear many more than just one hat at a church. Do you struggle with time management and giving yourself some downtime, rest time?
Not so much now. Before, my wife and I mean, she's, wives in ministry. I mean, they are such a blessing. And I always refer to her as a big, strong Russian woman, even though she's not, just because she does not shy away from doing anything. But a few years ago, it was all me. I did everything. We cleaned the church. We had lost our treasurer, so we were having to do the accounting at the church, paying the bills, everything. But then in the last 3 years, we got another group, and I led the worship. Via CDs because I can't play an instrument. And we had this family came in, and the wife played piano, teaches piano, and she's just wonderful at it. Well, she's been our piano player since. And her husband, he belonged to a family of pastors, and he said, we never had a normal discussion at family dinners. They were always deep theological debates. So he is now my deacon, one of my deacons, and he is very adept at doing a sermon. He's taken over the Sunday school Sunday morning. And then we've got some ladies that came in that they want to start a ladies group. And they also are willing to volunteer to clean the church and coming up with great ideas. Like this Sunday, we're doing a musical testimony sermon. And so anybody who comes up and gives a reason for their thankfulness or gives their testimony gets to pick out a song, and our piano player, she can look it up in the hymnal and play anything. So, and then we're going to eat afterwards, of course. So,
right.
But it's going to be a good sermon, and so they've really been a help. And but like I said, a couple of years ago, I had trouble getting anybody to help do anything. And so one Sunday I stood up and I said, since I can't find anybody to help, I'm taking the month of August off and painting the church. I said, it's up to you guys. You do the Sunday schools, you do the sermons. I'm the maintenance guy for the next month. And between my wife, my grandson, and another couple at the church, we painted the entire church from top to bottom, and it's 65 feet high. And we got the whole thing done. And then I went back to preaching. But it was kind of neat because I'm walking around the church every day wearing coveralls. And if somebody would have drove up, they'd have had no idea I was the pastor because I was painted. I was covered in white and green paint. And my wife, like I said, she's a blessing. I forgot she was afraid of heights. And she went up on a roof and worked with me all day long.
Yep. pastors' wives. What you said you were an assistant or associate pastor for quite a few years. What lessons did you learn under a pastor that you said, "Oh, okay, I'm going to remember this when I become a pastor," or just some of the experiences that you had, and maybe some ideas for other assistant or associate pastors or people on a pastoral staff. Just a little bit of your experience with that. What did you learn?
I had a very good pastor that I learned under, and he's since passed on. And he would always, bring me in with different things like counseling and stuff like that. And I also got to observe, when somebody in the church would get their nose bent out of shape about something. And it was amazing how some people would just give a tongue lashing to the pastor and all this stuff. And he would look at me afterwards and say, "Welcome to the ministry." And he would say, "You have to have a thick skin, to not let people get you down. Because, if they don't agree with something," and when I first went to this church, I told them, "If you ever have a disagreement with anything I'm preaching, you come to me. Don't whisper throughout the church, because that will, cause dissension. But if you have an issue, come to me. We'll open up the Bible. And if I'm wrong, I will admit it." And so another really good piece of advice. And the pastor I learned under was Pastor Gary Culver.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a great, great pastor and great man of God with a heart for the congregation. But he had observed my sermons and my Bible studies. And like I said, I love to study. So I was doing like a master's thesis on every sermon, on every study. And I would notice that I would lose people partway through. And so he came up to me and he told me, he goes, "Put it on the bottom shelf where everybody can reach it." And so before he died, I went to him and I said, "Gary," I said, "the best piece of advice you ever gave me was dumb down your sermons." And he goes, "Oh, I didn't say that." And I said, "Not in those words, but that's what you meant, to bring it down, instead of, a master's thesis, give them the Reader's Digest version." And that made life so much easier for me. It made my sermons so much more understandable for everybody else, because I'd been in the classroom and stuff like that, and you had to give them, everything, footnotes, references, all that. And to just be able to give the message in a succinct and understandable way, that made life easier for me. And then people could understand what I was talking about. So, like I said, he was great for a mentor.
Talking with Pastor Jeff Bisher, Windham Center Community Church in Rome, Pennsylvania. Finally, we started out this conversation, and you, as we got the background, and again, you said you came from kind of a wild background, and God got a hold of your life. Give some advice for people who go through a dramatic transformation like that. I'm sure you had a transition from hanging out with old friends who didn't follow Jesus or love Jesus, and now you're following Jesus, and did you have to separate yourself from some of those, or did you, how did you handle that transformation of your life, the one part to the new part, and friends from the old Jeff?
Well, it was, in a way, it was similar to going through AA. All right. When I quit drinking, I made a determination that nothing was going to interfere with my sobriety. And I've held to that ever since. And, God took that away from me, and I am eternally grateful for that. But also with my salvation, when I came to the realization that this is forever, and I'm so grateful that he forgave me for all the stuff that I've done. And the hardest part for me was forgiving myself for some of my stupidity. But with my old people that I hung out with, I was out in California, and now I'm out here in Pennsylvania. And I've had people that find me on Facebook and like, hey, dude, party, party, party. And I go, well, hey, maybe we can get together and have a Diet Coke or something. And then they look at my page. And one guy, I saved his daughter's life, and he was forever thankful to me for that. And he blocked me immediately. And it's like, wow. I was just stunned. And I've had a couple of friends that, when they find out that I'm a Christian, and then they find out that I'm a pastor, they just didn't want anything to do with me. Mm-hmm. But yet I have a friend in Texas that when he found out I was a pastor, he said, well, don't be preaching to me. I said, okay. And we kept messaging each other. And just about a year ago, he was going to be out traveling and stuff, and he contacted me, and he goes, man, I can't wait to see you and visit your church. I was like, wow. I couldn't imagine him ever having been in a church. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the people who knew the old me, I thought when I got saved that everybody would be glad because I was such a jerk. Mm-hmm. And I found it was just the opposite. Most people preferred me, as an ornery person. But the hardest part is family. And my mother and father were both kind of resistant to it. And, but they both got saved before they died.
Praise God.
And I was very thankful I did both of their funerals. Mm-hmm. And so I was grateful for that. But, oh, goodness, my dad used to say, well, some people need that. And my mother would say, oh, that's nice.
Right.
And they did not believe, but, during a family tragedy, they both came to faith. And like I said, then I was blessed to do their funerals. So, yeah, getting through to family.
Yeah.
You don't get invited to places. They had a wedding shower or bridal shower, whatever you call it. And I knew about it. And then after it came and went, I told my wife about it. And she said, well, we weren't invited. And I said, yeah, there's a reason. Yeah. Because they're not Christians and they didn't want to hear it. They wanted to have their kegger or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, we've learned to adjust and not take offense.
Well, Pastor Jeff Bisher, we praise God for what he's done in your life and the life of the church there at Windham Center Community Church in Rome, Pennsylvania. We appreciate you taking some time to give a little background. I think God uses all of our stories in a really powerful way. So, again, thanks for taking time today, and continued blessings on Windham Center Community Church in Rome, Pennsylvania. Thanks so much for your time, Jeff Bisher.
Thank you, Steve.
You've been listening to episode 21 of The Calling, a Family Life original podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you heard, be sure to share it with others and click the subscribe button so you know when future episodes are available. Family Life's original podcasts such as the Parable Podcast, Therese Talk, If That Makes Sense, 10 Minutes With, and the Rise Up Podcast can be found at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or FamilyLife.org. Family Life is listener supported, and your faithful partnership makes ministry outreach through podcasts like this possible. Find out more at FamilyLife.org.